Welcome back to Podcast Recovery, everyone. I am your host, David O, which is very weird because I normally have a co-host, but no, I'm going solo, sort of, today. We're doing something new for the first time on Podcast Recovery. We're doing a men's rap, so this is a sort of a round-robin topic with our guest, Herb H. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
How many years clean you got?
Working on 15. I got 14, coming up on 15.
Fantastic. And we have Martin. How you doing, man?
Doing great.
How many years clean you got?
8 years now.
Unbelievable. And our good friend Zach, who we just had on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I feel like I'm right back at home.
Hell yeah, man. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Glad to be here with you guys.
Hell yeah. How many years clean you got?
A little over 4.5.
Fantastic.
Working on 5, yeah.
And I'm David O, coming up on 9. All right. Now, today we are going to be talking about relationships. And don't feel like there's any protocol here. Just if you do want to stomp on anybody's opinion, go ahead and do that, because we all know each other well enough that we know we're all full of shit. All right. So today we are talking about relationships, and it's something that I think is incredibly crucial in all of recovery. So like the first thing that like I wanted to bring up is like one of the big like theories of addiction and recovery is like addiction is very much isolation and recovery is human connection. So how important is like starting that, like getting human connection and not like being stuck in that isolation anymore to like begin and continue your recovery?
Yeah, I mean, I was always a social person when I was younger.
Yeah.
And so my addiction drove me into this place where I was just alone all the time, and nobody wanted to be around me. My family certainly didn't want to see me. My friends, same thing. And so, you know, building relationships and recovery was like crucial to becoming who I was born to be, right? And it's uncomfortable at first making new friends, but I was always kind of good at it because my parents always jumped me from school to school to school. So I was always forced to make new friends. And so when I finally just committed to the fact that I needed a new way of life, like I was pretty much willing to do whatever it took. And I knew I needed, you know, people in my corner, just support, you know? And so I was willing to get uncomfortable. I think that's a stumbling block for a lot of people. They're so used to being alone in isolation. It's hard to like just form new connections. And it's kind of beholden to us, right? To like reach out to them and welcome them into the circle.
Yeah,
I agree.
And speaking of people in the corner, Martin was the person in the corner.
That's right.
And then like you just sort of just showed up and just hung around on like the fringe of the circle, and you would like laugh at everything. And
Yeah, we moved schools a lot when I was growing up, from Florida to Maryland. And for whatever reason, you know, my middle school didn't go to the same middle school as the elementary kids that I went with. And then same thing for high school. Then we moved states during high school. So I didn't really understand exactly what making friends meant. So it was just easier for me to just be the quiet kid in the back of the class. And when I skipped school, the teachers wouldn't even notice. And which was great, right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
And so I remember, though, on the other podcast you guys asked me, I think Eric at the end said, you know, well, how does somebody who's an introvert, who's scared of people, build a network? Which was a really great question. And I think I said I just fucking stood there.
You didn't.
So yeah, it just kept coming back, right? And eventually people recognized me enough to make me feel welcome enough and more comfortable. And it turns out that making friends really is just being able to be around, be vulnerable with another person, right? Let them know what's going on with you. They you know what's going on with them. And over time, you're able to trust somebody. And that was like another big key component for me was trust, right?
Yeah.
And her being my sponsor really helped me get to know another person over a long period of time. Because 8 years for me, we never stayed in one place for 8 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, we were 7 when we moved down to Florida. I was 14 when we moved back. So this is actually like, you guys are my longest term friends, right? Nice. Yeah, never having seen a baby grow up, like all of this stuff is new for me through the principles, you know.
Well, you heard. How's it been like you're the longest tenured like sponsoring people. Like how difficult is that?
It's difficult. I mean, my own experience with coming into the rooms, I did what everybody did. I stood at the back of the room all moody, looking at people, and I didn't trust anybody. But I mean, I had to shake off all of the toxic behaviors and just...
Because you're a self-admitted recovering asshole as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
absolutely.
am I.
Yeah. I mean, like most of us...
I think we all are.
We all kind of like destroyed relationships using drugs, and people no longer trusted us. So it takes time to learn how to... I know I remember hearing someone say it, it's like the first time you pick up, let's say you were 14 and you kind of stunt your growth at that point. I knew my only skills of really making friends was like walking up with a beer or a joint, like, hey, do you this, you do that.
Yeah, transactional relationships.
Yeah, and when Zach was talking about like, your friends that you had growing up, it's like most of those people were just like I was, so alcohol makes it so much easier to meet people at a party. You're going to hear this over and over and over again. It's like, I didn't have the courage to go up to this girl or anything like that. But I just started taking suggestions from people, I was listening in meetings, the first like year, what do? You really just listen and just hang on for dear life. But a couple of people, approached me and they took a chance, you even said you were scared of me when you first met me.
Dude, I was convinced you were fucking just full, like, straight out of rehab. I was like, this guy looks like a train fucking wreck.
And I was when I first came in, but by the time you met me, I had learned a few things.
And I was so surprised. I was like, what? This fucking guy has clean time? I was like, he looks like trash.
But that's the thing is like, I kind of love that story because it's like, if I can get it, you can get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You come in and you look at me and you're like, what? This guy's covered in tattoos, long hair. I'm like, who's he got to offer me?
Yeah.
Well, 8 years later, I'm still like a very integral part of your life.
Hell yeah.
And everybody in this room, really. I mean, it's like I've watched you guys grow up, and I want to stay on point here. Like when we first come in, we have all these coping skills that we developed in a toxic environment anyway. So it's like, coming in here and meeting some guys and like he said, becoming vulnerable with people. It's like, if you don't let the wall down, nobody can get in to help you.
Yeah.
And that was proven to me time and time again when I was on the street and I would go into a methadone program or another detox program. The people that kept trying and like didn't give up of just making suggestions, that paid off. And I started listening, and then like I was like, all right, I'll try these things that people were telling me, like get a network, because I didn't trust anybody. You know, trust is so huge for everybody when they come into the rooms. I think it's our, as people that are here and have been here for a while, it's like we really have to practice what we were taught in the beginning. It's like approach the newcomer, because most of them are too scared to approach you. I did that, and I think all of you have done this in the meetings that I've seen. Our area is really good about going and talking to them. We're not perfect about it, but there are a lot of people in this area that are not intimidated to walk up to the scariest guy who just came out of prison, the person who's like, looks like the cover for Aqualung. That's an old album cover. But,
did you just make a Jethro fucking Tull reference?
I did.
You suck.
Yeah. But, once I saw people, letting down their guard, and I saw that other people were sincerely trying to help them, that just opened my heart up a little bit, and working with Martin, working with Zach, working with you, it's like all of us have the same fears, really. I don't know, I've seen all of you guys grow, so I know the program works. It wasn't just like at first it was guys like, wow, I don't really feel like using, I don't feel like acting out on all the character defects that I used to. Today, actually, I feel better helping people than I ever did before in my life.
So. All right. And that, actually, you brought up defects, and you talked about trust and stuff. And some of these questions I'm pulling a little bit out of the NA step working guide.
Nice.
So, what defects do you pull into relationships or go into relationships initially with? Because I know, me personally, probably ego is the number one. I want to seem a lot cooler than I probably really am. I'm I'm a very verbose person. I'll talk about anything with anybody, but like I'll try and impress you, and like that's just something like I've always brought into any sort of friendship or romantic relationship, is trying to like impress that person and find a level of like worthiness in myself for that relationship, which is weird, like it's something like I grew up with from my past, and like dealing with like my dad leaving and shit like that, so always feeling less than. So that's always like, it's still apparent, and it's gotten a lot better. I can be a lot more of who I am instead of this fake individual that needs to like, oh, I'm so funny and I can do these things. But that's definitely still like a conscious thing in my mind, is like, not like, don't try and impress people, and just being who I am to establish a more genuine relationship. So I want to know, like, what are your, like, some of your defects that you've like brought into relationships, or you've seen come out through relationships?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I can easily be closed off and not get to that vulnerable connection with someone. At my home group last night, the idea was floated that you sort of put stuff out there and see if it comes back to you. And if it doesn't, you can reach this next level of trust. Okay. And I think I have that same kind of philosophy with it, because I can easily have a relationship with you based on the Ravens, and not go to like a deeper connection and a next level. And that's kind of the way I've built my long relationships with my friends.
Sort of like keeping things like surface level.
It starts out surface level. You know, it might be a recovery or some kind of activity thing. And then I might open up to you a little bit and see if I can trust you with that information, because my tendency is to keep secrets, right? And not get vulnerable. And I'm used to doing that in like a setting with a counselor or a sponsor where it's like more intimate. So just like in my personal friendships or in my romantic relationships, it takes a while to gain that faith and that trust that ultimately leads to, you know, the zenith of the relationship.
The deeper
you know?
connection.
Yeah. So
for sure.
Yeah, I'll definitely piggyback on that. The hiding who I really am, right, as close to my chest for as long as I can until I feel comfortable with somebody. And I still do that. I actually went to Reiki this week. My fiance bought me a Groupon to Reiki, and I think I said
that's such a weird sentence,
right? It's the first time I ever tried it. I think I said 3 words the whole time I was there.
Nice.
Because the lady, she didn't really ask a question directly to me, and she would only pause for like a second, so I just let her talk the entire time.
Nice.
And it's nice because like I feel comfortable in that now, right? But that also leaves people wondering what I'm really thinking, right? If I'm quiet, I can make assumptions about them, and they can make assumptions about me, and they're very rarely on the same page. And what I experienced, so you know, it's tough to know exactly, like relationships are really what this whole thing is about, right?
Yeah.
Because if we don't have relationships with others, then life isn't really worth living, right? I mean, I was isolated and alone. My best friend was a mannequin and a pug. You know, coming out of that,
so
there was
much.
You know, there was
the fact that you still have Manny is amazing to me.
Absolutely.
You just move him around the room, and you're like,
Absolutely.
He's been to some special
he
parties.
changes outfits.
Oh yeah, he changes outfits.
Yeah. He's still my friend. We just don't talk as much. So those, you know, those relationships are really what makes life worth living, right? And I guess I think it's important, and I'm going to get back to defects. I don't want to, you know, go too far off topic, but I think it's important for recovery that relationship with myself and my higher power had to come first in that building process to be able to have a relationship with other people, with my family, with close friends, and with society as a whole. So coming in initially, it was definitely fear. I didn't know the social norms, right? If somebody's in a relationship, I used to hit on their significant other. Saying the wrong thing at the wrong time was my favorite thing to do.
Like you did it actively?
Yes. If you've ever seen Curb Your Enthusiasm,
yes,
I had a special talent for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person every time. And there was something that brought me joy about that, right? That's just what pops into my head. So if I'm not actively trying to filter my thoughts, that's still what, you know, wants to come out. as a defect. For long-term relationships, though, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. To be able to actually have somebody care about me the next day, I really got to be, aware of what I'm saying when I'm saying it. And so part of what happened to me too is as I, a year in, 2 years in, I really started dealing with anger. And that was the other part that came up constantly in my relationship is how to not, get so mad that I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, slamming doors, punching holes in walls and smashing vacuums into little pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of miss punching holes in walls, though. It's like
I don't.
Really?
No.
Well, as long as you're not hitting a beam. Like if you're just hitting straight drywall, like you feel like a fucking king. You're like, yes, I did that with my fist. You're like, fuck that wall.
Yeah, I broke my middle finger on a steering wheel one time too.
Ooh, yeah.
I think to your point, ego is the big one too, right? Because the core of our disease is that self-centeredness, and I'm always right.
Yeah,
I'm always right.
Yeah.
So it's like, can I get out of my own way in our relationship and admit that you're right and apologize, right? And that's that next level of getting to a deeper relationship is
I mean, I feel like none of us had a good relationship with ourselves when we came in here, and that's kind of what Scott worked on me with is like if and nobody wants to hear this in recovery, but that whole idea of like try not to get into a relationship for a year. I mean, so many people miss that. I mean, I didn't do it. I actually think I was 2 years clean before I got into a relationship. But
why don't you fucking brag about it?
No. It's not bragging. I mean, it wasn't. Hey, I wish I could say it was a healthy
1%.
relationship. It was not a healthy relationship.
I made it 6 months. How long did you last?
I mean, if we're talking about just any relationship, like 3 months, 4 months.
About 3.
Yeah. Okay. Right. All right. Overachiever. Keep going.
I was not an overachiever. I was just a mess, and I knew it. Yeah. I mean, not everybody comes in here in the state that I came in here, and that's not making me better or worse. I mean, in my mind, it makes me worse. I was just like Zach said. I knew what I needed to do. Oh, yeah. It was the world was kind of against me, and I just couldn't catch a break, and all these other excuses that I could come up with. But like until I started I just want to say because I know all of you guys intimately, and I'm looking at Zach, I'm like, I remember when you and I were like early, I don't even think you were clean yet. Okay.
Probably not.
But I would come over and we would do step work and stuff. And it's like, I could tell that you just were like, you were receptive, like you wanted out of where you were, but like you definitely were going to do it your way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's not an insult. I mean, it worked. In the long run, it worked. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care how you stay here, just stay, Honestly, I was worried that I would lose you. To be brutally honest, I'm so grateful that you made the decisions that you did and that you're here now. And what I love is I can just show you your life and be like, dude, I told you, that you could get this, and now you have it. It's just like, I love it. Anyway, I digress.
Shocker.
Well, sorry. No, but like getting that relationship, like having self-confidence, you know what I mean? No longer dreading who you were and all of the things that you remember doing. When I came in here, I was really, really, ashamed. I felt guilty. I don't think I would have done anyone any good in a relationship, and previously the way that I ended up in a relationship was we just used drugs together. If we hooked up, maybe we just fell asleep together. But like that's how I ended up in most of the relationships that I had been in was just out of convenience and hey, she uses like I use, she can hang, so obviously I came in here thinking I knew how to have a relationship, but I had no idea how to have a healthy relationship. And that took time. I didn't come in here in year 1, year 2, and I was like, I didn't want to punch walls anymore. Yeah. What's really cool that I can say is that in the time that I've been here, I haven't had outbursts like that anymore. No. Like I made it a point. Like I knew, you said punching walls. I've destroyed a whole apartment. Busted every dish, ripped everything off the walls, and good times. I didn't know, but when you're high and you're out there and using, you might think that, but like realistically, I had to take a look at all of those behaviors and God bless all of the people in the programs that I went to, because I went to multiple different programs and I listened to them all. I'm like, I'm not scared to listen to somebody from AA to explain to me a concept. even Overeaters Anonymous. Some of those people have some real gems on how to get through situations, you know. And I mean, I realize it's, you know, it's a different substance, but ultimately, you know, these relationships,
it's augmenting
it
human
starts
behavior.
with us.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, if we don't love ourselves, how can we ever begin to show someone? You know, I've said in meetings before, it's like, if Zach had done to me what I did to me, he'd be in prison for the rest of his life. So like, I came in, I was like, I gotta learn how to like function. You know, I mean, I love the, you know, we didn't know how to live life without the use of drugs. I really didn't.
No.
If you're new to recovery, wait till you get into a relationship. You know, it's like, you know, the elephant in the room, it's like having sex clean. That's an experience.
Totally.
You know? And you talk about like anxiety.
Yeah. You feel like a little kid again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I'm in 6th grade again, man. Can I, is it okay to touch her now? You know, am I getting the right signals? You know, and it's like in sobriety, it's like you're trying to do everything right. You know, it's like back in the day, you would have just like, I'll just like grab her and kiss her. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's sexual assault in the real world, dumbass. You know, you can't act like that.
I mean, that concept of waiting until you're a year clean is valid.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the people how those 3-month relationships work out for us, right? You know, I mean, it's
the thing is, are you ready to have your heart broken? And I knew I wasn't. You know, I had seen myself fall apart, use heavier. You know, in any relationship, like if there was a death or a breakup,
I had to leave the state.
I would just get annihilated. You know, so I mean, absolutely.
You don't have the coping mechanisms to handle something like that. And then how is the relationship formed? Is it based on lust?
Right.
Did it start with friendship? You know, because I fall into that lust trap. And then you're in this relationship where you're in lust and not in love. And then when you lose that, it's just like, it's like,
once the honeymoon's over.
The problems are multifold, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't actually say anywhere in the literature that I'm aware of that you shouldn't get into a relationship for at least a year, right? No. That's a suggestion that everybody has tried to come up with because it's like something that's easy enough for a newcomer to remember, like, easy does it, bub.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like maybe give it a year, you know? In our literature, actually, I think it's in the Living Clean relationship section. It says something along the lines like sarcastically, like you read the line and you can see that it's sarcastic.
Yeah.
Go ahead and get in a relationship and you're going to learn about your defects. Right. Oh, yeah. And we do. I mean, most of us were able to. So the problem with getting in the relationship is that if you're actually working a program, you're not going to be the same person in a year that you got with that person.
Yeah.
So your standards are then going to be higher, and the person that you're with is no longer going to match up to who you were, right? Or you have a relationship.
Don't match up to theirs.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Or you don't work on yourself, because here's the worst part, and this happens all the time with guys. She starts using, or she has been using. He starts to get better. He no longer wants to be the same person with her, but he wants to be with her. So what does he do? He stops working on himself and he relapses. And I can say definitively it's the number one reason why guys are no longer in my life, either because of relapse, but a lot of them are dead, is because of a relationship. One that they thought was good or one that they thought was bad. It's the same thing. The suggestion that I really like that I'm trying to get out there is that you shouldn't get into a committed relationship until you've worked a thorough 6th and 7th step and have read the romantic relationship section of the Living Clean, right? Because let's tie it back to our literature. We don't have to reinvent anything. Yeah. It's right there. And the beauty of that is that however long that takes you to work a 6 and 7, right? Might take you a year. I don't know. Might take you 6 months, but you'll have a lot clearer picture on who you are and why you're that way. And you'll have the ability to actually learn what a relationship should look like through the eyes of recovery. And, a big part of what the romantic relationship section says is that you want to have a partner that you build together with, right? You want to have somebody that you can actually make a life together with. Yeah. And, one of the things that came up for me in one of those early relationships was definitely reflected in my 4th and 5th step, which was control issues. Big time, because, I I don't have control over what another person does. I barely had control over what I was doing or thinking or feeling on any given day. And now here's another whole emotional chaos to add to the mix. And wow, what a recipe for disaster when my old coping mechanism is using. And that's the one thing that I cannot do anymore. Yeah, I'm going to find out my defects. I'm going to find out a new way to live real quick. Unfortunately, that means smashing a lot of vacuums for me.
Yes.
And I remember being on the phone with both these guys constantly about, here's where I'm at, this and that, and unfortunately, when you're in that relationship, the last thing you want to hear is the truth. And nobody really wants to tell you either, which is that you probably shouldn't be in that relationship.
You hit the nail on the head when you said it, get through it quick, because a relationship can expedite your recovery, right? You're forced to look yourself in the mirror and all your defects faster if you can get through it clean.
And I think like the one core thing that like we've talked about and like I want to like segue into is like that relationship with self. And because like we all said, like we were very toxic individuals by ourselves coming, like we wouldn't have gotten into recovery if like we were a healthy individual. And for anybody who's listening, like this is a hard pill to swallow and it's kind of shitty to hear. But like somebody who's putting a crack pipe up to their lips, sticking a needle in their veins doesn't really love themselves. Like you can say you do, but you don't. Like when we're drowning our livers, we're just destroying ourselves on a day-to-day basis. That's not self-love. And like how we develop that self-love is really the important thing. And I think that's what that 6 months, 1 year, however much work you need to get done on yourself it has to start with us before we can incorporate another thing.
Let's be real too. Most of what we're dealing with are personality traits. And old behavior patterns that neurologically are pathways in your brain that are just your old go ways.
They're gunked up.
And if we're with somebody who we've been with for a long time or that we get with right away, it's really, really hard to change those old behavior patterns. It's going to be the same triggers. It's going to be the same reactions. It just makes it so difficult to be able to recover. And I say that to hopefully maybe have somebody out there here, like give yourself a break. Right? Be able to give yourself, that's why they're saying give yourself a year. But give yourself however much time that you can, right? To give yourself a break, to be able to just be you, to reset to zero, right? To just have a baseline of prayer and meditation in the morning, right? Being grateful for being alive, doing reading, writing, have some time and space to figure out like, what's me, right? What is me? And part of the steps, some of what we figure out is like, this I need to change. This I can work on. And this is just me. Some of this is just me, right? Some of my behavior patterns are okay. Some of my personality traits, they might not be lined up for some people, and that's okay.
But if you can, if someone clues you into the fact that you can look at your assets and those are valuable to you, just like what you just said, there's certain aspects of your personality from the day I met you that you still have that are very beneficial to your personality. So like you don't have to scrap everything, And
the way you described it was perfect with like the whole inventory, because I was in the food industry at the time. You were like, you have to go to the refrigerator and figure out what's rotten and what's still good and constantly change those things out and move those things where they need to be.
Right.
And but like building that self-love, like I kind of want to hear how everybody like built that self-love, because big like thing you taught me was like you build self-esteem by doing esteemable acts,
right?
And like that's how I really my self-worth really became validated by myself, because I realized that I was a person who was worthy of love, and was worthy of friendship. And honestly worthy of a new way of life, because in active addiction, I thought I was the world's greatest piece of shit. Like it was such
Dirt dog, right?
Yeah, I was fucking dirt dog, man.
Right.
I was the world's greatest piece of shit. Like I for some reason I had this high delusional like knowledge or thought of myself, but I was still a piece of shit.
Right.
And how I developed that was really by doing esteemable acts and being a person that was worthy of being around. And I'm going to switch the table. We're going to go this way. We're going to hit a reverse card with you now. Go.
Okay. Well,
I've never had to tell you, oh, please talk now.
I know. Yeah, it's early.
The question is, how do we build that relationship?
How do you,
Self-love.
how did you build that self-love?
Baby steps. Right now, honestly, when I first came in, like I said, I was standoffish. I didn't want to talk to people, but I knew NA worked. I had been here before. I'm not telling you got to go that route. That's not it. But I had been here and I went back out. And when I came back, there were still people here from, 10 years earlier. And I was like, okay, I know this works for people, but ultimately I also, when you get beat down far enough, you don't have a choice but to be honest sometimes. And like Scotty and like other people have it's so much easier to work with an addict who has just completely had his ass kicked as opposed to somebody who's kind of still in they still have some money, they still have a home, maybe they might still have some relationships. Those are like some of the hardest people to reach, just because like what Zach said, he's always right, and it goes back to ego until you lower your ego and be like, okay, and it sucked, man. I was 37 when I came in here. I've been through all kinds of, life events. So like I'm looking at people and lots of people do this. It's like, what does Martin know about drugs? Look at him. Look at him.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
That's
how we have that
thing
judgment of like, what does he know? He's from, wherever. But once I humbled myself, like those first three things, when like the readings in the meeting, just listen to them. That's all you got to do in the beginning. Everything you need to know about Narcotics Anonymous is read to you. You don't even need to be able to read, And I just started picking like little things. And Scott had mentioned to me, talk to people, you know, and I did, and it was scary at first and it was awkward. It's almost like when you had to approach like somebody you were interested in school and like take that chance that you're going to be able to trust them, just like what Zach did. You give them like a little bit of information and you see if it gets around the rooms or something.
You fold up the little note. Do you like me? Circle yes or no, and you pass it to him in the meeting. That's the way you do it. Yeah, that's how you get a sponsor.
But those esteemable
But get your friend to pass the note. Don't pass the note yourself.
Put a gummy bear in there.
Ooh, I believe
that's slick.
I believe the youngins were calling it a kite back then. But, stepping outside of my comfort zone and trying to like be nice to people and be involved, like just simply getting involved in your home group a little bit, that gives you that core group of people you're going to see every week, it's a safe place. And I told people like several sponsors years ago, it's like everything that you're going to learn, NA is a place for you to practice that, because everybody here kind of knows, like me and you get in an argument. Okay. Yeah. We already know that it's like, hey, I should go own my part of this problem, that I helped create and work through it. If you're not even willing to do that with yourself, like I knew I was sick. I knew I didn't like people. I mean, I was pretty much homicidal when I came in. Yeah. I had to learn how to love again, and of course I hated God. I didn't want to hear you talk about, God, that like my ego was, coming out there. Next. It's like, how dare you tell me what to believe? And I'm like, it was silly. It was just like, the fundamentals of breaking down that sense, that concrete sense of self. This is who I am. How dare you tell me what I should be doing? I'm like, but I had to come to the realization, like everything I had done had led me here to a point where I didn't want to live. I was suicidal, so why wouldn't I listen to some guys that, are obviously living better than I am? And I knew that they used like I did. You got to step through that fear. It's almost like, I don't know how to make you do it. Like I can't push you into it. I can suggest it, and I know I made suggestions to several sponsors, but like, what can you do in a meeting to kind of like ease things up? And it's like, it is a controlled environment. If you're intimidated by people, that's okay. Find a smaller meeting. You know what I mean? Don't go to one of those 120 people meetings. Find one of the smaller ones that you can feel that is a little more intimate. And as you grow and as you feel more comfortable, your anxiety kind of like levels out a little bit and you become comfortable. Then you can move on to things. And that's what helped me build on how I felt about myself. Like I did start, I made a home group. Like I was never accountable. I didn't show up somewhere. I could barely hold a job.
Yeah.
So like, okay, 7:00 Wednesday night, I got to be here to, open up, and like, people were counting on me. So I had to, that gave me a little bit of like, hey, I have a responsibility, and I actually did it, and then other people saw that it's like, well, he said he would come make coffee, and he did. Okay. So then like, other things come up, maybe you're, trying to facilitate the group conscience or something like that. There's all these little jobs, quote unquote, that really kind of help build you up, and I've listened to so many people share their stories about like, guys that were dope sick that were coming in, while on detox, and they'd help set up charities because they just needed something to occupy their mind with, instead of like, obsessing about the way they felt,
staying in the maze.
Yeah. And just an hour a day. I mean, people are like, well, what good are meetings? I'm like, well, if you do it right, and you just go in, like get get out of the way and listen, open your ears up for at least 1 hour. You weren't dwelling on all your problems.
And you weren't using.
Yeah. So that's one place you can start, is just simply getting involved. Talk to people. Don't be scared. I mean, I tell people that all the time. It's like, how did you buy dope in Baltimore City?
I'm going to call bullshit on that.
What?
Be scared. Being scared is a normal human emotion. Yeah. Just work through it.
Right. But you weren't scared to walk into an alley at midnight, with $100.
No, I still was. I just didn't give a fuck.
But you did it. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And I'm like,
exactly. The fear is there. Like, fear is normal. Like, I don't like that don't be scared shit. Being scared is fine. Like, that's a normal human emotion. But, like, that then you use the spiritual principle, courage.
Courage is not the absence of fear.
Yes. Thank you.
It's just going through it anyway.
Self-love for me, it really, you got to start with the basics, right? You got to start with willingness to change, right? Let's start with self-care. Let's brush my teeth every day. Let's take a shower every day. Let's go for a walk outside and do some healthy things.
Eric would kick my ass if we didn't bring that up.
And what happens over time is the more willing you are just to do the basics, the more willing you are to do the more challenging things. And because you started to grow some sense of, love and integrity, you become more open-minded to maybe changing your behaviors now instead of just your activities. Yeah. Right. And you start to see these patterns through the steps of the things you don't like about yourself. And you're like, man, I'm really willing to commit to changing this, and I'm willing to do the work. Yeah. And it is work, and it's practice. And I had to like be willing to change jobs and be willing to go back to school. And those things helped me to open my mind to greater possibilities. And in turn, you're starting to build that self-esteem because now I'm doing these esteemable things, right? I'm taking care of my health. I'm going to the dentist, just the basics, right? Let's start with the basics and be willing to change. And you almost have to be beaten down though, right? I mean, we had this talk so many times, when can I receive the gift of desperation, and you have to get to a point where you're willing to change anything, that's what they told me, change one thing and that's everything. And there were so many things I didn't like about myself. I had to start at ground zero, and it took time.
So, I mean, I can remember even in like my third year struggling to say I like myself, right? Today, I can absolutely say I love who I am today. I love who I am today. I remember at one point, David gave me the suggestion to look in the mirror and say, "You're fucking awesome," or something like that. Was that what the mantra was? What was the mantra?
Something like that.
It was something like, "You're fucking awesome," like, and I tried awesome. It. I was always willing to take suggestions, right, from my predecessors, and I would actually stand in the mirror because even like even looking in the mirror was really uncomfortable for me. Yeah. Herb talked about the guilt and the shame that I felt from using and what I had done with my time, and to be able to start at the beginning where I'm no longer who I was. Yeah. Right. Because for me, if I'm in recovery today, then I'm not who I was. If I'm not going back no matter what, then I'm not who I was. I don't have to feel all that guilt and shame because who I am today is not that using addict. Yeah. Right. I'm an addict in recovery. And so I can remember vividly this meeting that I was at. And I remember the feeling that this guy gave me. He was talking about his hobbies, right? He's like, I've been clean this amount of time, and I like rock climbing, and I like writing short stories, and I do this and I do that. And I walked away from that meeting like, what the I don't like anything. I have no hobbies. I have no passions.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't even talk to anybody after that meeting. I just went and sat in my car like, oh my God, I have nothing. Like, who am I? You know? And thank God for that guy's happiness, right? Because it actually drove me to start looking around the next day. Like, what am I into? You know? And, like, I kind of like piano. Maybe I'll start practicing piano. And I like typewriters. I went and bought like 3 typewriters, you know, like right away, so I could have things that I'm actually interested in. Forget what anybody else likes. What do I like, right? And this is like...
That's a weird fucking hobby. I like typewriters.
Repairing typewriters and having typewriters, yeah. You know, having those things, because what is it really? I have to have a relationship with myself. I have to basically be dating myself, right? And
because no matter where you go, whoever you're there.
And that was such
like people are going to come and go. You're always there.
Totally a foreign concept to me, right? Even just saying I love myself was totally contradictory to the religion I was brought up in, to the way that my parents raised me. You know, having self-respect was like a dirty word, because if you had respect for yourself, then you must have been doing bad things to other people, right? And to me, that does not equate. That's not the same thing. The more that I care about myself, the more I can care about other people. You cannot make yourself sick enough to make somebody else well, right? And so as I started to build that relationship with myself, I started to be able to say like, wow, I'm going to make time and space in my schedule to take care of me. So what's that going to look like, right? Nobody else is accountable to this except for me. And that's hard, right? I'm way easier. I could put something in my calendar and be accountable for you, to do something for you, to buy something for her, right? Right. To get something nice for the houses, right? But for me, that's the hardest thing. I struggle buying myself a shirt. Right? That's how bad I am with a relationship with myself. So what I started doing is implementing self-care stuff. So like going to get a massage once a month, every single month. I found a place that it's a school of massage that was very affordable. Sometimes it was a great massage. Sometimes it was terrible, but an hour of having, you know, somebody touch me was like a totally foreign experience that was great for me.
Yeah.
Being able to go and get my hair cut, right? I mean, there's so many things that I have done now. I've gone skydiving, right? I've gone, and all of these things in order to expand my relationship with myself and to be able to end that trip. And, you know, like you mentioned, walking has been a key element to me, mentally, mental health wise. Somewhere along the lines, I heard, you know, Prozac, 30-minute walk is equal to Prozac. And
I like that.
Not telling anybody to get off their Prozac, but it made more of an impact on me to get up in the morning before my fear and anxiety had a complete grip and control over me, to go out and to walk. Now that walk usually would actually turn into a run. If I told myself I'm going running every day, I would never get up. Right.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm just going to go out and I'm going to have a walk around the block. And wow, the mental change that I have to be able to start a day for who? Just for me. Right. And then through the steps, obviously, being able to recognize the principles, because if I'm doing my best to have that relationship with myself and I'm acting through, forget even the principles, right? Let's boil it all the way down to a practical application. What is the next right thing? And if I'm not sure, or I feel like I'm going to act out in the wrong way, let me put some extra time and space in between me figuring out what the next right thing is. Maybe even long enough to call Zach or call Herb or call David and say, what is the next right thing that I'm supposed to do in this situation? Because I really don't know right now. But yeah, the relationship with myself, and part of that was also like, I picked up this phrase somewhere, free myself to be myself. I have to free myself to be myself, right? I don't know how to act in certain social interactions. So like, I started saying yes to things that I didn't want to say yes to, right? So somebody would say, hey, we're having a bonfire, come over. Oh my gosh, what am I going to say to these people? Oh, you know, I'm sweating before I'm even there. But I would say yes to it. So that was the first step, just saying yes, right? And now I'm showing up, right? Well, I don't know how to act without a beer in my hands, right? So what I would do, I don't know about anybody else, but this was my trick. I had to free myself to be myself, right? I would get a seltzer water. I'd open the seltzer water. I'd chug it, right? And I would pretend like I was getting drunk. Right?
Burping the whole way.
And it was like the old neural pathway of feeling a little bit loose, right? Mm-hmm. That would allow me to go into the situation the way that I used to, which is feeling like I could free myself to be myself. Well, it turns out I didn't need the seltzer water, just like I didn't need the beer.
Yeah.
Right. It was a choice to grant myself permission to be able to feel comfortable in this situation.
Well, that kind of reminds me of Dumbo's feather. Like you thought you needed this magical, elixir to allow you to be yourself.
What a reference!
Yeah.
God, you're fucking old. Thanks. Sorry.
Hey man, it's one of the benefits of getting clean.
Oh yeah,
I never thought
you get to get old.
Yeah,
exactly. Like it's better than the alternative.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I had being old. I'll springboard off of that. Being old, it's cool because I've gotten to see everybody in this room come in as they were when they came in and change. Mm-hmm. That's one of the benefits of spending some time in this program is watching the changes that happen in people. And then going up to them and be like, hey, Martin, how did you get over that hump?
Oh, yeah.
And people that are actually practicing, living a different way, they're going to be open to you to share, and who shared on the streets? Nobody shared on the freaking streets, not without an ulterior motive of like, I'm going to give Zack a bump because I know I'm going to need something down the road,
right.
Mm-hmm. But here, I noticed that there were people that were honestly just trying to help because that's what was helping them. That's like the wonderful part of like, once you start to change, you can redefine your whole being.
Yeah.
Like I try to, everybody struggles. And I mentioned this earlier. I came in and they threw God at me and I was like, you get to, the cool thing is, and I think I've done this with everybody I sponsored, is for once in your life, you get to take the time to look at like what all's available out there spiritually and what really speaks to you, not what your parents instilled in you or anything like that. For once in your life, the decision is fully yours, and I don't think I had too many opportunities that I honestly felt fully free like that, that I got to choose. Yeah. I get to define who I am moving forward. Yeah. And 1, 2, and 3 in the step working guide really gives you like once you get those, and I used to work those, with Zack because, I don't care, send me hate mail, whatever. I'll work 1, 2, 3 with somebody who's using, because hopefully in my mind that gives them the strength and the faith to step out there,
to take a step
and be like, all right, I'm gonna go in and do whatever I got to do and make that decision. But I don't think, until you have some clarity, how the hell can you really define where you want to go? Martin was saying he didn't even have any hobbies. I didn't either, and that was like a suggestion to me is like, I hadn't picked up a fishing pole since I was a kid, so like, what did I do? I went and I got a license. Ooh, actually paid for the license, and I did it the right way. Yeah. And I went out, I didn't catch any fish. I mainly had turtle chasing my bait back to, and I could see him. I'm like, no, and it was kind of funny because it reminded me of like being a kid and like, just enjoying myself. But then it gave me something else. This is just something I got to share. I met this redneck. He's like, man, I just can't understand, meditation, and we had known each other for a couple of years, and he knew that I was a practicing meditator, and he walked up to me and he's like, I just can't do that. I can't just sit there, and like, he can't do that. I said, well, do you go fishing? And I said, when you get out there in the morning and you put your boat on the water and there's like that smoke and there's just a couple of birds, it's perfectly silent. The lake is like glass. I was like, you are meditating. You just don't know it, because as you're sitting there reeling that in, like, what are you thinking about? And he said, I'm kind of looking at the trees and the sky and how beautiful everything. He believed in God. So he was like, just looking at the majesty that, that my higher power created. And I was just like, I wish I'd have had a meditation that good this morning, where I truly connected with the beauty of everything. I was just, we learn so much from one another, and I pick pieces from every person I meet. Like, I may see something in Martin that I'm like, wow, I really wish, that I could do that. Well, I can try, You know what I mean? I can try and being as loving and as open as he is, you know, or like with you, I can be a jokester, you know, I can learn that like, it's okay to have a sense of humor with your friends. And it's like, I mean, since I've been here, I've seen so many people accomplish so many cool things. Now, I'm not talking about like, oh, they got the job that they wanted, but like just setting workout goals. You know, it's like I've seen you go from like barely leaving the house to like getting into yoga to getting into mountain biking, and that just, you know, opening up his world to new people. Because then he met people in the program that were, you know, mountain biking and stuff like that. And you come into these meetings, you share with people. It's like like I said in the beginning, it's baby steps.
Yeah, it's a lot of little
to
things
start
that
really
build upon each other.
moving away from, you know, fear of people and not trusting them to finally going, okay, I let Martin come over to the house. He didn't steal anything. There, you know, there's all these little subtle things that you have to watch for. But like, if you just take the suggestion and open that door a little bit, you know, I'm not telling you let everybody in, because, you know, once again, not everybody here has got your best interests at heart. And I say that almost every time I share. Pay attention, but don't be so closed-minded that you won't let the people in to love you and to teach you to love yourself.
Yep. And my final topic is building, because you were just touching on it, building that relationship with your higher power through prayer and meditation, and like how we all came to do that. Because you were the first person, Herb, to ever ask me, what the fuck did I believe? Nobody ever asked me before. It was a complete, like, I was 25, 26 years old. And it's so weird that no adult figure or priest or whatever, nobody ever asked me, because I was raised Christian, but I fell out of favor with that. And I didn't know what I believed. I didn't know how to pray. Didn't really know how to meditate. So I had no relationship with a higher power. And anybody who's out there listening, pick whatever you want. You don't have to pick anything. Like, you could pick a doorknob, you could pick a window, you can pick God, you can pick Allah, you can pick Buddha. Anything works as long as it works for you. And that was the first time somebody really asked me to really kind of figure it out for myself. And give me that freedom. So it was cool to be given that license to find what I believe. And I read a lot, and I encourage everybody out there, read a lot. Read shit you don't believe in. Yeah. Like, if you read the fucking Bible, read the Quran, read the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, read some pagan beliefs, read everything, and then eventually you'll find the whatever works for you. And like what worked for me, like really, and what really felt right was like the 9 noble virtues of Norse mythology and ideology, or whatever you want to call it. And I love it because it wasn't 10 things you don't do. It was 9 things you do, and things that you are already empowered with to just infuse into your life to basically be the best version of yourself and for everybody else. And that was, it was really cool that you really opened that door and allowed me to express myself spiritually for the first time on my own terms. So right. Like, how did you guys do that? And like, what did you find? Yeah,
it's an ever-going journey. You know, it's still a work in progress. I did a lot of research. This started with you, Herb. I mean, you told me, think of a power greater than yourself. And I was like, what's a power greater than myself? You'd be like, how about the judge? When he was sentencing your ass to go to jail, you didn't have a choice in the matter, did you? Right. And that was a power greater than myself. So I needed some examples to open my mind. Yeah. And then I needed to do some reading. Mm-hmm. And I did. I read the Bhagavad Gita, and I read the 4 Agreements, and I read this really great book called Religion is Not One. And it discusses all the world religions. And I liked bits and pieces of all of them, these concepts of karma and forgiveness and meditation. And I realized at that point, I didn't need to choose one. I needed to choose what worked for me. And it was a blend of elements of all, right? And I could bring that into my personal space and kind of craft my own thing. And for me, the power that's greater than myself that I choose, because I know it, because I feel it, is when I'm out in Mother Nature. And like, you're just enlightening me about meditation, because I'll beat myself up. I don't meditate enough, but you just reminded me that when I'm out there, that's where my heart is still, and that's where I feel that peace of mind. And that is my meditation, and I will be so moved by the things that are going on around me when I'm out in nature and I'm out in the world, and I see the beauty there. And I know like that's what calls my spirit. And so that's kind of the spirituality I've crafted. But I do like the concepts of karma and putting good out into the world and doing the next right thing and letting it come back to you, and I would steal a lot, like when I was using, right? And now it's like, I can't steal, because that will come back to me. If I do this bad thing, something bad is going to happen to me, and that is the beauty of it. It can be whatever you want, it doesn't have to be a religious God or anything like that. And it's an ever-going journey. I'm sure if you ask me about this 5 years from now, it'll be something else. And that's okay. And I don't need to explain it. No. I just have to feel it and know that it works for me.
Yeah. I just want to interject before you go. I don't want anyone to ever think that, they can't be who they want to be around here. When you talk about like, picking, the aspects of what you studied, like, the aspects of Christianity, you like, people will give you grief sometimes like, you can't do that. I'm like, well, I am. Yeah. The meditation stuff, it's like, I'm glad that I could help, just like, when I hear somebody say, hey, you did this for me, you instilled me to go look at this. It feels great. I'm like, instead of me like, you know what I mean? Like those esteemable acts, like just simply helping somebody and then seeing them do it and seeing something click for them. It's like, hey, I kind of helped put that in motion, So like, I'm not the piece of shit that I thought I was. I do care about people and I do love people. And I'm like, my biggest thing, I think, I told all of you this, is like, just don't be a hypocrite. You know what I mean? Like live live what you say you truly believe and
live your truth, everyone.
Well, no, I mean, there's so many people like, I mean, you came in here asking me for, like not literally, but ultimately as, being here before you were, when you walked in and you were saying, hey, I want to die. I don't know how to get through life without putting crack and heroin in me, alcohol, whatever. That's, just the fact that I'm like, I didn't hook you up and like, hey, yeah, I know where you can get some crack, and I got like a little money put in.
I should hope not.
No. But like that was my old behavior. When we were talking about like who we were when we came in here and like those baby steps of like reaching out to somebody else and like, planting a seed with them. It's kind of cool.
Let me hook you up with some Buddha. It's going to fuck you up.
Hey man, one of the greatest things I ever saw, I love that shirt, is a hope dealer. You know what I mean? Because like, it's really easy to kill somebody, but to save somebody, in my opinion, takes a really strong human being. Yeah. Because killing somebody, it's like what? I forget. Like I read a lot of like real crime stuff.
You can kill somebody by not picking up the phone.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
It's easy as shit.
Yeah.
I mean, this is about relationships, right? Yeah. And without the relationship that you and I had, and you giving me the suggestion to go out and do your own research, like I may not have done that. Right. Or I wasn't open-minded enough to pursue it on my own. I needed some starting point. Yeah. And, that's the beauty of the journey, man. It's your journey, and there couldn't be a more important person to do it for, right? Like that's the real benefit. And when I get caught up
Juan says that. You couldn't do it for a better person?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. That's a Juanism, I'm sure. Along with desire is an immeasurable quality.
So when I came in, religion was definitely on my resentment list.
Contentious.
And even now, right? Even now, we've got the Catholic Church coming out with 300,000 young people that were harmed. That's their number, right? That just came out that they're finally admitting to. And that number is probably low based on the average of 5 to 6% of their priests
and just time injury itself.
Yeah.
How long they've been
so so I had a lot of resentments that I continue to work through with different religions, but I'm glad I stayed open-minded and was able to stop just being angry at God in general. And I mean, we've had so many deep conversations about maybe even taking God out of the literature and saying just higher power would be beneficial to a lot of people, which is a great topic. I think the main thing was
Tune in next time.
Yeah. The main thing was staying open-minded for me was the ability to be able to find out.
Yeah.
Right. Find out what feels right. For me, what that really looks like, I read a lot of books. I had a lot of really cool, deep conversations, which, Herb definitely encouraged me as we got into the third step. The first step is really, I got a problem, right? I got a major problem.
Yep.
And I got to really accept that at a heart level, not just know I'm an addict in my mind, but know I'm an addict in my heart and accept that at a base level. And step 2, like that surrender gets deeper, and there's some hope that there's actually a solution. And step 2, like when I'm working with my sponsees, it's as simple as this, right? The higher power thing is, are you God? No.
Right.
Okay. That's all you need.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
Right. And the group being able to go to other people for help, right? For that solution, that surrender. And then for some guidance. I mean, the deep conversations, I can't have these kind of talks with people in real life, right?
Yeah.
I have to be in the rooms. I have to be with people like me to be able to have these kind of real talks without judgment. And, at its basis, it's about a relationship, not a religion. For me, that's really what it comes down to. And just like that relationship that I have to work on with myself, that relationship that I have to work on with other people, I have to work on the relationship with my higher power. Yeah. I have to be able to put the time and the energy in to be able to feel that. Some of the experiences that I've had, the real spiritual experiences that I've had since I've been clean, I always feel crazy trying to talk about them and explain them because there's no great way to try to verbalize something that is beyond yourself that you get to experience.
That's a good thing. Like, you shouldn't be able to, like, if you can put your higher power in a box and you're like, oh, this is exactly what it is. It's like,
take step 1.
Yeah, that's not much. Like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. And even in step 3, right, Herb really told me, like you were saying, David, be able to find out for you, read, let it change, right? Be able to figure out what it means, because nobody is here to tell you that. That's not what the 12 steps are about. And you don't have to define God. You don't even really do that later in the steps, right? There's no this isn't Scientology where you make it all the way, you give over all your money, you find out it's Zenith, right? there's no perfect answer to that question. But to me,
we got paid to tell you that?
No.
Right.
Fuck no, I wouldn't have paid you nothing.
Yeah, it really is to me about the relationship. And sometimes for me that means action, and sometimes that means just sitting still. But meditation has been by far the biggest key component for me that I have control over, to be able to, like, my home group is a meditation meeting where we as a group, we all meditate to guided meditations, right? We find them on, what is it? Instant Timer. I forget what
Instant Timer. Yeah, I know.
I forget what the app is called, but and YouTube. There's tons of free meditations that are out there that are phenomenal, and just being able to take that practice of meditation deeper and deeper and deeper has been massive for me to get to really what I was looking for in drugs. Right. Yeah. What we thought we had found in drugs. Right. I really thought that I was going to be able to find some kind of spirituality, but I kept seeking, right, and found out it really, my higher power will give me just about whatever it is I'm looking for. And one time that was a big old bag of weed, right on the street. Somebody said, "Oh, you never just find weed. Well, you never find drugs." I found a big ass bag of weed when I was desperate for it. Nice. And in fact, when I look back on it, really, I got all the using and all the misery that I was looking for.
Yeah.
Right. That was basically the mantra that I had, the affirmation that I said over and over again was, I hate myself. I'm a piece of shit. Yeah. I would affirm over and over again, everything's crappy. I'm never going to get better. I can't live like this anymore. And now those affirmations, take effort to be able to look in the mirror and say, I love myself. To carry out the affirmations of, I want to feel peace and freedom. Yeah. Right. These are part of my practices that really do change the way I feel. The other thing is probably weird, right? I like to have a clean house.
No, that's not weird. That goes back to self-care.
That's part of my spiritual practice.
Eating the right things, like doing the right things. Yeah, cleaning your house if it makes you feel
because
good.
Have a baby and try to keep it clean.
Nice.
I was looking at you. I was like, he's not gonna let him live that
out the window.
No, fuck no.
But to me, part of that is gratitude, right? That feeling of gratitude is part of the spirituality, and gratitude being an action word means If I'm grateful to be alive, how am I showing that?
Yeah.
Right. If I'm grateful to be clean, how am I showing that? If I'm grateful for my physical body, how am I showing that? You know, all those things are important.
Yeah. And like in step 3, when I was really like browbeating myself about how the fuck do I like turn this over? How do I really do this action? And you just gave me just the simplest answer. You were like, okay, whatever attributes you think are attributed to your higher power, generosity, honesty, all those principles, whatever those are. He was like, you told me to write them down. So I wrote them down and I brought them to you, like so excited. I was like, this is what I believe my higher power is. And you were like, cool, do those things.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was it. And I was like, that's it. And he was like, yes, be honest, be generous, be compassionate. Just that's you living like a higher power, not like a lying, stealing piece of shit. And once you just start living those principles, doing those esteemable acts, it just falls in line.
Yeah. I mean, even if you don't, like I've definitely heard several people claim that the program of Narcotics Anonymous was their higher power. And that works for a lot of people. You know, it's people get scared and like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that. I'm like, no, not really. You know, it's just a matter of like, you know, emulating, you know, someone that that is practicing all of those principles that you claim, you know, that you want to practice.
Yes.
You know, and that's why, you know, everyone like just don't be a hypocrite. You know, I try not to be a hypocrite. Like I haven't gotten in a fight in 15 years, but since I've been, you know, almost 15 years. That says something. You know what I mean? That I haven't stolen something, that I haven't lied to people, that I haven't manipulated people. I'm like, I don't care if I can define what I believe, but if I could show you that I've changed my, you know, there's plenty of people in my life today that would have never had anything to do with me, you know, back then. And they actually appreciate me, you know, because I do those, you know, do kind things for people, you know. I don't know how much time we have left, but I'm like, I kind of wanted to, you know, pose this. It's like, how did it change in the last 2 years? You know, because like the meetings, you know, not being able to go to meetings, switching up to Zooms, like a lot of those relationships were pulled away from people. I know a lot of people struggled with not having that. You know, you brought it up at the very beginning, that, you know, that human contact that we get at whatever meeting we go to.
I think it spoke a lot to. I think it was a challenge for all of us on some extent, not so much for Eric because he lives in a lighthouse. But yeah, like having screen time versus an actual hug in a meeting are two completely different things. Yeah. And like having to but like part of that is recovery, like being safe, like with yourself and everybody else is a key part of being a part of society. Is like we had to do what we had to do in order to be safe as individuals and as a collective. But it spoke a lot to my personal program of being able to sit with myself. Right. And I think a lot of people got exposed to themselves. And sometimes it went really well. Sometimes it went really bad. I think it was tremendously hard for people who were coming in. I think the 2020 class of recovering addicts had an extra battle ahead of them. But it did add a really cool aspect of the digital recovery. Like it exposed a whole new avenue that I think a lot of the old heads were not familiar with or open to, but I think it's a really cool aspect that like brought a lot more recovery together because people from Indiana and Europe could just get on a Zoom meeting anywhere. Yeah. And
I just want to touch on that because I think it opened a whole new avenue for a lot of people.
It was a test for your recovery, right? And I felt like I transitioned pretty well because I had been living out of state years ago, and I had made a lot of connections with people online and formed relationships that way previously. So I was comfortable getting online and having conversations before the meeting and after the meeting, and that was okay. Fortunately, I was in a romantic relationship with somebody who I really enjoyed spending time with, so that was great. Right. And then it also allowed me to get out in nature by myself. Yeah, I could go out for a bike ride by myself, and I was like, this is great. Right. You know, I can do this on my own, and this is what I like anyway. And then we just broke the rules. We would hang out with each other anyway sometimes. I mean,
It was under 10 people.
Yeah,
We were being safe. We were socially distanced playing Monopoly with those like old people grabbers moving our that never happened.
So yeah, the pandemic was definitely an interesting piece for recovery. And let's be real, right? Like the opioid epidemic is still going on.
Yeah.
Like most of you guys, I'm not afraid to be on the front lines of this fight, but I think there's a whole nother generation coming behind us because of the, being stuck inside and not being able to get socialized with school. As much as I hated school, it is part of the socialization process. The children wearing masks, I'm very against. And I think there's going to be a lot of addiction and problems coming behind us because of that. And I'll still be here. I'll still be part of this program, right? That's the beauty of the 12th step. When we get it, we don't leave. We get it, and we stay to try to be a help to the next person. I don't think personally I would have made it in the rooms and been able to recover just on Zoom. And, to have people now come into the meetings and say, man, it's weird to be here in person because I'm used to being on Zoom.
Yeah.
It's cool, right? And throughout the whole thing, it was really, to me, it was about finding what I could do, not focusing on what I couldn't do.
Yeah.
I held my meeting open into winter as long as I could, where we'd meet, we'd have masks and we'd have lawn chairs, and we, did a hybrid meeting with our Zoom. I went to the meetings that did open that were, doing what they were supposed to be doing. And there's been meetings almost the entire time that have been open in our area. We're blessed to have a lot of people and a lot of great recovery in our areas. A lot of, churches that were willing to still host us.
There were even underground meetings.
Meetings in
there were all
parking
these
lots.
rogue meetings.
Yeah, it is what it is. But I love the idea that no matter what these people, whatever your opinion is, they were still willing to meet with each other to do what they needed to do to get through. So I do appreciate, I'm not picking on it.
Necessity was very much the mother of invention.
Yeah, because a lot of people were struggling with that. Well, without that human contact.
And just like when I was using, I would do what I had to do to get what I wanted, right? And if you're focusing on what you can do, you're going to find it. And if you're focusing on what you can't do, you're going to find that too.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
The danger there is a lot of people didn't come back, right?
Yep.
And they got used to that isolation, and now they're comfortable in that. So it was a tough time, and I couldn't have probably got clean on Zoom either. And I applaud anyone that has.
Absolutely.
That's a whole nother level of willingness that shows your commitment.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think it's a new facet too. You know what I mean? It's like the only constant on this planet is change. No matter what you believe, everything changes, and we're growing and evolving and changing. It's like just in the 15 years that I've been here, the changes that I've seen in recovery, and across the board, like all kinds of different programs out there. And I think we're going to continue to learn. It's like you had mentioned like the older people, old heads. I think you said didn't really appreciate Zoom, but it's like some of them did.
Oh yeah.
I saw a lot of older people that were very fearful because they're up in age. They may have underlying circumstances that hey, COVID could have really taken them out.
They were still using typewriters.
Well, no. There's a lot of guys in our area that I think I don't know what they would have done without it because they've got 25, 30 years and they're so used to the way of life that they have been following, but not a lot of people embraced it. And it gave them a whole.
You didn't have a choice.
Yeah, I think the Zoom meetings is a good thing moving forward.
And I hope they stay, because shout out to Australia and Scotland and being on a Zoom meeting where they basically follow the same thing we do, just they sound cooler.
Yeah.
Well, we have a friend, a mutual friend that we all know.
Podcasts are really great too for anybody out there listening.
He just became a truck driver. There was a huge need for truck drivers in America. He just became a truck driver. I'm like, his name's Shannon. But I know that his job is not going to enable him to get to a meeting all the time, but he can, with this new thing, it's like he can get to a meeting anytime he wants to.
Yep.
I do like that aspect.
Yeah, he can listen to 8 straight hours of recovery just going wherever.
To your website.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're about out of time, so I would like to thank my guests, Herb, Martin, and Zach, for joining us. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
That was
Thank you.
fantastic. I'd love to do this again in the
Absolutely.
not-too-distant future.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, here at Podcast Recovery, we're aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts. Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of recovery to every addict, wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us once again. We here at Podcast Recovery are self-sustaining, and we need help keeping the mics on. So please go to our Patreon, go to our Facebook, our Instagram, our YouTube, our Twitter, like, share, subscribe, invite your friends, come join us on the show. But most importantly, everybody out there, stay safe and stay clean.